Welcome back to the Caffeinated Cruiser. It is a blustery December day, and the roads are dry, and most of the salt washed away last night in the rain, so we are out for a ride. I am on my V-Strom 650 and bundled up in my cheap winter gear, and I am loving it. So, yeah, Christmas, New Year, almost 2025. A lot happened in motorcycling in 2024. Well, let's jump right into it. So, best bikes of the year, and this category really for me is just simply bikes that were cool or unique or came in at a certain price set or price point or feature set that set them apart from some of their competitors. So, without further ado, I think one of the most anticipated new releases is the new Honda Hornet 1000. I mean, come on, a 1000cc naked bike from a premier manufacturer that costs under $10,000. Are you kidding me? You know, this bike makes around 150 horsepower depending on what version of the bike you're picking up. It weighs under 470 pounds, and again, for around $10,000, you are on what is essentially a hyper naked, and I think that is awesome. I would assume it's going to come with Honda's reliability and build quality, and I sure hope it does. But again, at $10,000 to get a 150 horsepower bike that is, you know, relatively raw and, you know, exciting and how it makes its power, and there's not a ton of rider aids or anything. I mean, that's a cool throwback. You know, I really like that. Later on, I'm going to talk a little bit about Harley-Davidson. And in that part, I'm going to talk a little bit about how expensive their bikes are and how old they are in a sense, and how the engines are kind of old, the technology is kind of old. But the difference between the two of these, even though this is a motor, if I'm not mistaken, from the 2016 Fireblade, is that they are taking old tech that worked, putting it in a new bike, a new build, a new chassis, and they're making it cheap. They're not charging brand new, modern 2024 prices for a 10-year-old bike or even longer than that. So again, I think this is awesome. I really do think we need a lot more of this. And I think right now with the way the economy is worldwide, having cool bikes that are coming in sub $10,000 when in a lot of different styles is a really, really good thing for the motorcycling industry. I think that one's an easy pick, and that should be on everyone's list. That new Hornet 1000 is just awesome. Also, kind of looks like a Ducati. Yeah, it's kind of a Wish.com Ducati, but I think it's actually a really handsome looking bike, and I think they did a great job with it. Up next, the Yamaha R9 sport bike, or YZF R9 if I'm not mistaken. So basically taking the MT-09 and putting fairings on it and clip-ons, setting it up for racing and track days. I think this is a really cool thing. Again, with most manufacturers getting rid of true super sport options or hyper sport bikes, putting fairings on some of those more athletic and sporty naked bikes I think is a great idea. Again, especially if the price point is decent. This one I forgot to write down what the price was. If I remember right, it was still relatively expensive. I want to say it's between maybe 12 and 15,000 USD. Let's switch gears a little bit. So Royal Enfield's had a really big year as well. They had the Bear 650, which I made a video about. I think that's a sweet bike. They had the Himalayan 450, which by all accounts seems to be a really awesome bike. Lightweight, again, cheap. Well, lightweight for Royal Enfield, but again, relatively inexpensive with a relatively high feature set. But I think this is a really good looking bike, and I think, again, good looking adventure bikes are few and far between. I think this one is handsome and retro. And for the size of it, it makes decent power, and it's really designed to be a lightweight bike that you can go on adventures by yourself. And you don't have to worry about picking that bike up if you fall over. You know, that's one of the biggest issues with modern adventure bikes and the big adventure bikes, even mid-sized ones, is they weigh like 600, 700 pounds. So having, you know, relatively lightweight motorcycles that are easy to maneuver is a big deal, especially if you are truly going up the Himalayas or up some mountain pass or something like that. Again, I think this is a really cool bike. It really makes similar horsepower to their 650s, but I think this is a cool bike. I think it's good looking, and I think that's another big story that has hit the motorcycle, you know, news media, is that basically every manufacturer has come out with some sort of 400cc to 450cc adventure bike, and I think that's great. I really have fallen in love with smaller motorcycles or mid-sized motorcycles. You know, right now, again, I'm riding a Suzuki V-Strom 650. and I love this bike. That being said, I did knock this bike over accidentally, and it was pretty heavy to pick up. It still is a relatively hefty bike and kind of top heavy. So again, having those lower, shorter motorcycles can really be wonderful. Yeah, you don't have as much ground clearance, but if you have to pick it up by yourself, you're going to have a lot easier time than with one of these bigger bikes that's on stilts. Royal Enfield's had a big year. I think they also have a 450cc Scrambler something coming out. Maybe it's already out in some markets. It doesn't look like it's here in the U.S. yet, but I think it's replacing the Scram 411 if I'm not mistaken. But it does seem like that little engine that's in there, that little single-cylinder thumper, is kind of a peach, so that's cool. So switching gears again to a big single-cylinder thumper, I think another bike that I'm really excited about is the Ducati Hypermotard 698 Mono. I think not only is this a very, very, very attractive looking bike, but it's something cool. I mean, we don't have that many true supermotos anymore. And with potentially KTM and Husqvarna and Gas might maybe biting the dust here soon, having someone else come in and put a big single-cylinder thumper on the scene, it's pretty cool. I know I had my Sparkpillen 701, and I loved that bike. It kind of felt like a supermoto. And this new one from Ducati, as far as I'm aware, it is the biggest street-legal single-cylinder motorcycle on the market. It makes around 80 horsepower, butt ton of torque, and again is relatively lightweight. And all the reviews say that it is awesome and super playful. And it just looks cool. I honestly really like the black and red color schemes, and if I had $14,000 to throw at a motorcycle, that would be pretty high on my list. That being said, $14,000 for a single-cylinder motorcycle is a lot, and I can't imagine spending that much. I think I would go find a used KTM 690 or a used Sparkpillen or Bitpillen 701 if I really just wanted to experience that single-cylinder thrill again. Because $14,000, whew, that is a spicy meatball. cfmoto Ibex 450. Another really cool, small, technically middleweight, maybe even lightweight adventure bike. This one is very cool. Again, the reviews on this are a little bit different than the RE450. This thing really does have long travel suspension. It's set up to rip around off-road. It can take jumps. It's an awesome bike. And if I'm not mistaken, this is a twin cylinder with a 270-degree crank. So it sounds really good and sounds like a big bike. And I think that's my highlight of the year is manufacturers are making small motorcycles that sit and feel like big bikes, but with that small, lightweight package that's really easy to maneuver and handle. So I'm really pumped about that Ibex 450, and I think it looks super good. If I was in the market for a small ADV bike, that would probably be pretty high on my list again. And it seems like when people ride it, they love it and rave about it. So I think it's awesome. Makes about 44 horsepower, weighs about 386 pounds, and I think looks on this are 10 out of 10, and value is a 10 out of 10, coming in at under $6,000. I mean, that's just a killer deal. And on top of that, it's got all kinds of cool tech if you want that as well. So yeah, lots of cool small bikes right now out there that are really exciting to look at. So I think honorable mentions on the list of best bikes. All right, honorable mentions. I made a whole video about this one, but the Triumph Tiger Sport 800, I think it's called. I think that bike's really cool. I really do think that we need more of these small to middleweight or lightweight sport tours. I think a lot of people are using big adventure bikes for essentially sport touring, and I think they'd be better served with a bike that is set up as a sport bike frame or sport bike chassis, with sport tires, but with that upright seating and upright ergonomics of an adventure bike. So I'm actually really excited about this one. I think it looks really good, and I am a bit of a Triumph fan, so I'm sure that plays into my thoughts on it. I do think that we need more of those types of motorcycles, and I am excited that we got one, and I hope we see more of this. Adventure bikes are cool, but not everybody really needs an adventure bike, and for most people, I think a well-set-up lightweight sport tourer would suit them better. And yeah, so go watch the video if you haven't already. Honda Transalp 750. I do think the Honda Transalp 750 is a cool bike, similar type of bike to my V-Strom 650. That 750cc 75 to 80 horsepower-ish range really has a sweet spot in my heart, and I think that's what most people should be riding once they get past their beginner bike stage. So I'm excited that we've got that on the market. I guess on that note, all the new and actually really new Suzukis, all built off that 8S platform, I think those are really cool. I don't think they're honestly that good of looking bikes, but I am glad that we have them, and I'm glad that Suzuki actually put the work in to bring out some new motorcycles and new models. So good on you, Suzuki. Thank you for doing that. Oh, and also that new DRZ 4S. Now that one is not a new motorcycle. It is basically a very old motorcycle, just reskinned and rebadged. But I think, again, if the price point is right, bikes like that have a place in today's market, and I think we need cheap bikes. So bikes or bike news that I think maybe were a little bit of an L this year. Okay, so yeah, I mentioned it earlier, Harley-Davidson. And I'm going to put on this list every primer gray Harley that came in over $20,000 this year, which is almost every single Harley-Davidson. I don't know what the deal is with offering primer gray bikes as their entry-level paint scheme. That is not paint. That is primer with a clear coat over top. And the fact that you have to pay more for black or any other color in basically every model is ridiculous. And then on that note as well, another L this year, I think, was the CVO Pan Am. I don't know who that's for. I don't think I've ever seen one on the road, even though I've seen a handful of Pan Ams around us because we're right by a Harley dealer. That bike, I don't know. It's wildly expensive. It's got a great engine. It's got a lot of good things going for it. And I was really excited to see Harley branch off into a different type of market. And I think that's a good thing. But instead of bringing out a CVO Pan Am, they really should have brought us the 950 Pan Am. That's really, I think, what people wanted. And I don't know who would be buying a CVO Pan America. I don't think any Harley guy would. And I don't think any adventure guy would over the base model. Again, just my opinions, but I think that's a little crazy. Another L this year is that Harley basically completely axed any of their Sportster 883s or 1200 models. I think those are bikes that Harley desperately needs to bring back to the market. I think brands like Royal Enfield is stealing their lunch because they're offering basically old bikes that look good and are relatively cheap. No, they're not the fastest. They're very heavy. And there's things about them that are maybe a compromise for today's bikes, but if you bring that old aesthetic and that old style to the market at the right price, people will flock to it. I honestly think if Harley brought back an 883 with all the customization and everything else that the 883s had for decades and decades, and they price it at maybe under $7,000, I think they'd sell a butt ton of them. Because I think people really do want that old retro kind of feeling and that rawness that those bikes offered. And I'm by no means a big fan of the 883 or 1200, but I do think there's a big hole in the market where those used to sit. And Harley is doing themselves a disservice by not having that motorcycle in their lineup. The other big L, again, like I said, is why is there no 950 Pan Am? Coming at the right price, people will buy a Harley adventure bike. And I think the Pan Am, even though it's weird, like overbite, took a while to grow on people, it eventually did grow on people. And people like it now. When I see a Pan Am, I'm like, oh, sweet, that's a cool bike. Where, early on I thought maybe it was a little bit ugly or a little tacky. Obviously, there's still no Bronx. There will probably never be a Bronx as long as Johann Zeitz is the VP or whatever his title is, CFO, CEO, big guy upstairs. That's a big L, but I don't know. I'm kind of over crying about it or thinking about it. At this point, if you want a Bronx, just go buy an Indian FTR. The Sportster S was, in my opinion, what the Bronx was going to be. I think they pivoted halfway through it and said, hey, we got to make a cruiser because, we're the cruiser company. And that's why we got the Sportster S instead of the Bronx. And I rode one of those, and it was a cool engine and terrible ergonomics and just tons of compromises. Obviously, KTM, when you're going through a list of L's or worst motorcycle news of the year, you can't help but talk about KTM. Going from buying MV Agusta and, having Gas and Husqvarna and being in a MotoGP and all these different sports to then potentially going fully bankrupt, having billions and billions of dollars in debt, thousands of unsold motorcycles, the quality control issues, the pay-to-play issues, the cheese cams, they basically, in some ways, they stabbed their fan base in the back with a lot of the mistakes they made. And on top of that, they just seem to have mismanaged entirely their business, which I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you get to be $3 billion in debt and then still go and buy something like MV Agusta. Like how disconnected are you from reality? That being said, I'm a huge KTM fan. I love the brand. I've owned 2 different KTM models in my Husqvarna Smartphone 701 and my Duke 390, and I think they're sweet motorcycles, and I don't want to see them go anywhere. I'd honestly be super sad if they closed their doors. It would be kind of tragic in my opinion. So I really hope they can figure this out. Again, I made a video all about my thoughts on what they should and what they might do. Slash the models that don't perform and focus on good quality bike and start serving your customers again. And maybe you could be around for another couple of decades. But I'm bummed out for KTM, and I hope they get this figured out. BMW, I made a video about this one, but the new R1300 GES Adventure looks like a refrigerator on wheels. Terrible looking bike. I don't know what the heck BMW is thinking about that. They also have their sport touring model, which also looks horrendously bad. So just in general, BMW styling, it's super strange. On one hand, they show us a super cool concept in their 450 GS. That thing looks so sick. And then they come out with something like the R1300, and it's just a dumpster of a motorcycle. I cannot imagine spending money to ride that thing. It looks ridiculous. So again, go watch that video if you want to see more of my thoughts on that. I might be in a minority here, but I just think that is an ugly motorcycle. Alright, the Kawasaki Z650. I think that one came out this year. I think it was announced last year. People seem to like it. I just think it is a stupidly expensive bike for what it is. And I think styling wise, why wouldn't you just get a Royal Enfield or a Triumph, one of the, maybe like the 900 Triumphs? What is the Z650 giving you that one of those other 2 motorcycles wouldn't give you for either comparable price points or significantly less in the case of Royal Enfield? I think that bike is criminally overpriced, and it really only looks good from the waist up. So that's a big L. Let's see. The fact that we haven't got a Versus 400 or 500 yet, and they're still stuck on the 300, which I think they switched away from that motor 6 years ago or something. Come on, Kawasaki, update that bike. I know there was a front tire sticking out of a box at eicma or whatever, but stop teasing people. Just give them the bike they want. Why wouldn't you? The Versus fan base is pretty much as big as a V-Strom fan base, and yet we still don't have a 400 or 500. I just think that's weird and a miss. Okay, Yamaha also. The fact that they still are selling their R3 with no updates, even though it is super underpowered compared to the rest of the 400 and 500 cc's beginner bikes that are out there, both in the naked bike form and in the sport bike form. I don't see why anyone would spend money on that bike at this point. There is 20 better options, including on this list, including the Royal Enfields I mentioned, the cfmotos I mentioned. Basically everyone other than maybe Suzuki has a better entry level, naked or sport bike. So yeah, don't buy that bike. So I think that about wraps it up. My thoughts on, the best and worst of this year. I'm sure there's more that I missed, and, maybe I'll add some in later. But I hope everyone had an awesome Christmas. I hope you guys have a great New Year. I hope you're safe. I hope you get to spend time with friends and family. Other than that, coming into this new year, hopefully we'll keep growing the channel. We'll keep making videos, and I'll keep getting better at making videos and editing them. I've learned a lot this year already, and I'm really thankful for a lot of the support we got. If I'm not mistaken, one of my highest viewed videos and liked videos was a MotoGP one. I think we're well over 8,000 views at this point and over 100 likes. So that was super cool. We had some other videos that did really well and got a lot of engagement, so that was really cool. And our subscriber count grew tremendously between basically September and November. But yeah, again, thank you guys for an awesome 2024. Thank you for the support towards the end of the year. And I'm just thankful that all you guys are watching and commenting and stuff. So if you haven't and you're watching this video, please like and subscribe. I'd love to keep growing this channel, and I'd love you guys to be a part of it. And yeah, I guess other than that, ride safe. Peace out. Keep two wheels down. Bye-bye.